And we are back with another episode of the Hockey Princess podcast. I am your host, the Hockey Princess. We've got Chris, the old guy, with another cigar, back at it for another week.
Woohoo!
Wahoo! Let's get into it. Guys, we've got another mixed bag, different announcements from the NHL scope, some college hockey, and then we're going to get into the Pacific Division predictions. So first up, as we dropped last week, there's going to be more hockey at Wrigley following the Winter Classic. We talked about it last week. There's Penn State, Wisconsin, both Michigan teams. Quite a few other college hockey teams are going to be playing some sort of competition post-Winter Classic at Wrigley. Figure it will be the first week of January. According to Ben Pope in his tweet earlier today, that sort of schedule and breakdown is set to be released, or at least more details about it is supposed to come out at some point. I'll say tomorrow when we're filming this, today when it's out. Because it's supposed to be set to come out on Thursday. That'll be very exciting.
Okay, and I'm gonna do speed bump number one. I see that you still don't have a counter for me, but then I figured this is a good place to talk about being at Wrigley.
Yeah.
So, just like to tell your listeners, I was at Wrigley last night. I had not seen the Smashing Pumpkins since like the early '90s. Got to see them.
Excellent.
I would like everybody to quit bashing what Billy's wearing. He's just putting on a concert. I wouldn't be all that concerned with what Billy Corgan is wearing. They were really good. My first time seeing Green Day, and I thought they were fantastic. What a fun show.
Yeah.
So, wanted to throw that out to your listeners. If you get a chance to see that concert, if it's coming by you, I recommend it. And definitely, if you haven't seen Green Day, I recommend that highly.
Speaking of Wrigley, though, Krusty, so we got the Winter Classic coming. We got some more college hockey after the Winter Classic. Do you have any recommendations in terms of folks getting tickets, where to sit to watch hockey at Wrigley Field?
I really don't.
Would you recommend higher up?
Yeah, what people are telling me is to go higher up. You'd know better than me. You've seen a hockey game there?
And I have not seen any bit of it where we
were. You want to be higher up. Your seats are not going to be as good as they would just being at the United Center. It's all about the atmosphere and everything. So, usually the tickets are a little bit more expensive higher up. I believe we are in the 200 level for our seats. I don't know exactly where. I could pull that up and state it for next show. But that was handled, as we talked about before, kind of bad by the Blackhawks. I just kind of figured that would be the spot. As far as telling anybody, just remember, if you're down in like that 100 section or whatever, or the teen section, it's going to be kind of hard to get a sight line. I would assume that's where you and my woman were at for the game in 2010.
I just really remember chucking my hand warmers, the things that you like put in the gloves, at an obnoxious Dead Wing fan when we were losing. That's all I really remember.
Yeah. Again, just enjoy the event. Try to get a little bit higher. The tickets are going to be a little expensive. It's about the atmosphere. When we went to St. Louis, I had a really good time in St. Louis. I liked the people around us too. You said you didn't, but they kind of made some rules that, we weren't going to talk about Stanley Cups, keep our heckling to just the game. And it turned out pretty well. It's a good way to get to know the other fan base a little bit without going crazy. So, but yeah, I don't have a complete recommendation. I don't think there's a really great seat in the house, probably, it is what it is.
It's not what it's not.
True story. So, yeah, and anybody coming in for it, you do need to understand there's not a lot of parking around Wrigley. It's a shit show to get there. The only good thing is there's a lot more bars and other places right around Wrigley that you can go and stay warm before you have to go in.
Yeah.
So, get there early, do some partying. Should be a good time.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm very excited to see at least more details of the college hockey stuff.
Yes.
That week. All right. Our next big thing of announcements is, guys, we have a new captain in the NHL. There was, Toronto had a captain. So he's still on the team, but we have a new captain now, and that is Captain Austin Matthews. I was a little surprised, but partially not. I figured Tavares would have moved on to another team or retired, and then they would give Austin the C. I didn't think that they would give Austin the C while Tavares was still there. Also, because I think, at least from my bad memory, this is one of the first times where I've seen that they've given the C to a new person while the previous captain is still on the roster. But it definitely silences the haters for Toronto and for Austin Matthews, where a lot of people were questioning, if he wanted to stay, if he was going to stay, whether Toronto had faith in him to keep him, being there's constant, the core four is going to get disbanded. Austin's leaving. He's going to, Los Angeles or Arizona when the Coyotes existed. This sort of silences everything. He is there to stay. He is your captain. And good for him.
Yeah, it definitely threw me for a little bit of a loop. Tavares has 1 year left on his contract. This also maybe makes me think that Tavares will not be traded during the year, and there's a good possibility Tavares is re-signed by Toronto at a very good hometown discount. That way, you're still you're not chasing after the fact if you sign Tavares again.
Yeah.
That you still want to give Austin the C is just because you want things to move on. You want to show him exactly how much you're relying on him, how important he is to your organization. As far as happening before, the only other time that I remember is Dustin Brown was wearing the C in LA, and it was taken away from him and given to Kopitar. Back after the Kings were, it was us and the Kings for about 5 years, considered the top two in hockey, beyond a doubt. The Kings had a little bit of a struggles. Dustin Brown game slipped a little bit. They had whatchamajig behind the bench, who was difficult to play for Sutter. And so at some point in time, they decided to do that and move when both of those players still, Dustin Brown probably played for another 4 years. So, we can have a whole show of the importance of the C. We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
The non-importance. Tavares is a seasoned veteran now. He knows he didn't do anything wrong. He understands the ins and outs of everything. If you were expecting him to lead you to the promised land, it wasn't completely Tavares' game. But you have a shutdown centerman who's great at the dot that can score clutch goals for you. he did what he usually does what he's supposed to.
Yeah, and I mean, from everything that I've read and heard, I mean, he took it very, very well with the change and was fairly understanding of the situation.
Yeah, so and again, it's Toronto. They love their drama. You know, I am sure it didn't help them seeing, you know, the Oilers in the cup. As they're still far away from it, but again, oh well. I don't think the C will have anything to do about that. That is dependent on if they listen to their coach or not. So that's all. That's about all I got on that one.
All right. Next big piece, which is going to include a lesson from Crusty Old Guy, is we got some news in St. Louis. You've got Philip Broberg and Dylan Holloway of the Edmonton Oilers were given a qualifying offer sheet from St. Louis. They have both signed that. And so now the Edmonton Oilers have until August 20th to match that, or the Edmonton Oilers get draft capital from the St. Louis Blues for this exchange. Both Broberg and Holloway were restricted free agents for the Edmonton Oilers. So Crusty Old Guy is going to break down on what all of this means.
Okay, yeah, I'll save my opinions for a tiny bit. Let's go over what this involves. So basically in the collective bargaining agreement, you go from your entry level contract. After that is up, you are an RFA. And then you become an RFA with arbitration rights. They were both RFAs. They were still negotiating with the Edmonton Oilers. In hockey, you are allowed to what they call an offer sheet, which means any team can come in and offer a new contract to said player. The player does not need to accept this. He can get offers and just go, I'm not interested. I plan to stay here. But once it is signed, the team that has their rights has 7 days to make a decision. Now, there is a breakdown for compensation for each player depending on what the contract is signed. Funny part from St. Louis, both of them are $1 below what would then go to the next contract. Like if they gave Broberg an extra $1, compensation would be a first round draft pick instead of a second. Holloway, if they gave him another $1, it would have been a second rounder instead of a first, or instead of a third. The other point is you have to have your draft pick for that. So the day before, they made a silly trade with Pittsburgh that nobody knew why they did to get back their second round pick. They sent Pittsburgh back theirs and then a fifth for like a third. It was really weird, but the reasoning was because they needed that second rounder back to give to Edmonton if they don't match. So that is with any player that isn't signed. Any RFA. Who do we have out there right now? Who do we got? Throw out an RFA.
That that just signed or that's been an
Let's go with the two from Detroit. You have Mo Schneider, right?
Yeah.
And is it Caulfield?
Sure.
No, it's Lucas Raymond. They're both RFAs on Detroit. They are in negotiations right now with Yzerman. They could sign an offer sheet. And then Detroit has 7 days to make a decision. Okay. Now we've set the basic guideline for this. If you guys are still with us, I commend you. We're only going to go through a little bit more, and then I will release you to just my opinions, which I know is what you want to hear. Okay, so now they have 7 days. The reason this kind of happened is because the Edmonton Oilers are right now about $3 million over the cap. If they decide they are going to keep both of these players, they will be about $10 million over the cap.
Woo.
They have to get under the cap before the season starts. So the Chicago Blackhawks were in this same kind of scenario after the 2010 season. The San Jose Sharks made a qualifying offer for Ante Niemi and Nicholas Hjalmarsson. Stan Bowman only signed one.
Jammer.
He matched the bid for Nicholas Hjalmarsson, or Jammer as we like to call him. And as much as everybody wants to bitch about Stan, what a move. He picked right. He picked big time right. So that's basically what's happened to Edmonton. They're in a bad spot. St. Louis sensed it. And it's pretty funny that it's Stan Bowman again that has to go clean up the mess. So we'll see where all of that goes. Crusty old guy's belief is Holloway will be signed. He's about 2.5. Broberg, they will let go. And they will get the second round pick. They cannot afford him. St. Louis is definitely overpaying for him. He spent most of the year in the minors. He came up at the end for like the last 2 rounds of the playoffs, played well, and played real bad. He had some decent games and some horrible games. That's just a fact. So St. Louis is banking on, hey, he's just 23. He's going to continue to get better. I don't see how Edmonton matches that. There's no way they can get the 10 mil back. Their situation right now is Evander Kane, who most people are figuring they will long-term disability him at the beginning of the season. That saves 5 mil. There's been a lot of stuff out of Kane's camp that, hey, I'll be ready to go. Don't be doing that. These things are a little tricky. They're a little dirty. They're a little bit of everything. So if they go with that with Kane and make one other small move, they should be able to get in underneath the cap and have Holloway signed. So that's Crusty Old Guy's figuring on it. It's usually considered somewhat dirty pool. It doesn't happen a lot. Kotkaniemi was one that it actually went through.
That one was awesome.
But right now, if Carolina had a do-over, they wouldn't do it. They're trying to get rid of them because you end up overpaying for the player. Yeah. And most GMs don't like it because then you end up bringing up what each position and caliber of player gets. That goes higher because then they compare it to it. So it doesn't happen a lot. St. Louis is trying to get into the playoffs. So again, if it is not matched, like I figure with Broberg cannot be traded for a year. He has to stay with St. Louis. That will leave St. Louis with 5 D-men that they can't trade because they have 4 other ones that have a complete no trade clause, not modified or anything. So put St. Louis in a weird position.
St. Louis likes to be in weird positions. I have really little to no understanding of the direction that they're trying to go in.
Yeah, I mean they're trying to get
confused.
I mean, they were both first round draft picks. So you're getting a first round draft pick for a second and a third. You figure that's a win. And you know that there's no way they can match both of them.
No.
They just can't, because they have so many other players with no.
Well, and I feel like if they were able to match, then they would have. Their contract with Edmonton would have already been signed. There's a reason that it's still in negotiation stuff.
Exactly. Broberg wasn't going to get his money, period. He knew that. They still have Bouchard next year that they have to come up with another like $6 million to $7 million a year, on top of the other $6 or $7 million that they have to come up for Drysdale. So even next year, this team will not have any money. So both young players understand that too. So there, it's a long version. I hope people kind of could understand it. Did I do an okay job?
You did a great job. You're doing great.
Oh, crusty old guy loves positive reinforcement.
I love it. All right. Next to our biggest part of today's episode.
Look at that graphic. Oh, I got to make my predictions though too. I've done some homework, but I haven't listed them yet.
I've done some homework, but as most of my predictions are off of vibes and feelings, not actual logic.
So let's hold on.
I would assume that our 7 and 8 are pretty similar.
Yeah, I guess I can fill this out as I go. So we can start. You want to start at the bottom again?
Bottom. A shocking prediction. That is the San Jose Sharks. Like I've said with Columbus, like I've said with Montreal, yes, they have pieces. Yes, they have solid first-round picks, top 5 first-round picks that are going to be huge pieces potentially in their rebuild. But guess what? Everyone is also getting better in your division. Yes, you have Macklin Celebrini. You have a couple of other guys, but at the end of the day, San Jose is still pretty bleak at the moment. I don't think that they have what it takes to jump ahead of Anaheim, because I think Anaheim is somewhat bleak, but definitely has more pieces. I think this year is kind of Anaheim's last year of like dark days, but they're still, in my opinion, ahead of San Jose in the rebuilding process.
Yeah. Well, I'll give you all of that. I will also have the Sharks at the bottom, but you know, we look at their lineup. We're figuring Will Smith is going to play, right?
Yeah.
Macklin Celebrini is going to play, right?
Yeah.
They have Logan Couture, right?
Yeah.
They've signed Tyler Toffoli, who's a 30-goal scorer. They've got Michael Granlund, who's a decent third line center. They signed Wenberg. They got Barclay Goodrow. That right there is about a team that is twice as good with forwards as we are.
But the real thing with San Jose is who's defending and who's in front of the net.
Exactly.
That's really what I think kills them.
Yeah. They've got Wallman, who's not a bad player. The Pickles' cousin or uncle or wherever he is still there. But he's 37. And you have nobody in net. You know, you're hoping the Vanek, who, you know, Krastioga does not mind him, or Mackenzie Blackwood. Could I see the San Jose Sharks moving up? Yes. That's a pretty talented top 9. If they gel, but defensively they are weak. goaltender, I would put them below average, but not at the bottom. There's teams with worse goaltending tandems.
Yes.
But defensively, they are going to struggle. But I do like their forwards. I think they will entertain. I think the fan base will be happy. Could I see them going up a couple spots? Yeah, if everything goes right, there's a good amount of talent, and their forward talent, what they also have, are pretty solid defensively. So that that can cover up some blemishes with your
Definitely.
demons. So. But again, they're still picked last.
Yeah. 7, I have the Anaheim Ducks.
As do I.
I do think this is the last year for Anaheim where it's pretty bleak. I'm not saying that next year I think that they're making a playoff contention, but I think this is the first year that you're going to see a lot of their other prospects who have been in juniors or overseas start to come up a little bit more than they have been. I think this is the first year where everybody's kind of like dipping their toes in the water, and next year is kind of where they make a bit more of a jump. That being said, you look at the standings at the end of last season, and there's a huge point differential between number 6 and number 7. I do think that the gap between 6 and 7 is not going to be as substantial as it was last year. I think there still is going to be a gap between it, but I don't think it's going to be as huge as it was.
Yeah, I'm with you on just about all of that. Again, they're starting to make their bid to start to move up. There is a lot of talent there.
Yeah, and it's a lot of talent in different pieces. Like they're not just forward heavy or like forward talent heavy, and then everything else is an issue, or like they have a ton of defensemen and they have no one that can score. They've got a lot of different talent, and it's very much across the board in terms of different types of playing styles and different types of positions, which I think benefits Anaheim a heck of a lot more than it benefits San Jose right now.
Yeah, and their main ads is you got a Robbie Fabre who's, at some point in time gonna break out and become the player that everybody thought he was going to be. Probably not. But they got Gudas to help out on the back end. I mean, I look at their back end, they have 2 very young defensemen that are very good. They've got Mitnikov, who had a coming out party a little bit last year. And for those of us watching juniors for like the last 3 years, they have Owen Zellweger, who is a very talented player. Only question with him is he big enough to make a difference? Is his skill level enough to make up for his size? We're going to find out next year because he's going to get plenty of minutes.
Yeah.
And Cam Fowler's a solid player.
Yeah.
In the forward position, nobody that it's a superstar yet. Looks like Zegras will start the season there. But you have Leo Carlson, you have Mason McTavish. And then you have a bunch of veterans there. So again, kind of like San Jose. Could they gel? Sure, hockey's a weird game. You have Gibson, who's been there forever. He can handle the net. I just think he loses interest by midseason because
he's playing for Anaheim.
It's such a shit show in front of him, and you kind of get tired of always having to be the man. It's exhausting.
Try to fight Peter Mrazek and then get thrown out of a game.
Exactly.
Just so you don't have to play the game anymore.
Again, they're a team that's on the cusp of getting out of the cellar. Not on the cusp of making the playoffs, but just getting out of that. We're one of the 5 worst teams in the league. And again, San Jose and Anaheim are for your fan base, your listeners, to understand exactly how difficult it is to start to move up these rungs. It's just not an easy task. So,
Number 6. This is slightly because I didn't know where to put them, and also because I think from what I've seen this off season, they got rid of a lot of guys and didn't have much addition. And that is your Calgary Flames. I don't think that they're going through a complete Kyle Davidson burn it to the ground rebuild, but I definitely do think that they are in the trenches of struggling quite a bit in terms of their roster. You know, they've gone through issues where truly everybody wanted out of the city, management wanted out of the city, like nobody wanted to be there. I just think that they are struggling quite a bit right now. They don't have a ton of pieces. And this is also just because the top portion of the Pacific is quite stacked. I think that they have enough to not be bottom of the barrel in the Pacific, but I don't think they're anywhere near playoff contention or some of the top teams in the Pacific.
Exactly. For lack of a better word, yes, they are a dumpster fire. They've got some good players. You've got Huberdeau. You know, you've got Kadri.
Yeah.
They've brought some people home a little bit. You know, Anthony Mantha's there. I think Lomberg, you know, one of your unsung heroes from your Florida Panthers, is signed. But is there a true superstar goaltender?
No.
I mean, not goaltender, goal scorer? No. Huberdeau is a great all-around player.
Yes.
Who played like crap last year. Yes, he has the ability to get it going. They also got Jake Bean. But again, defensively, they're not very good. And in net, they're a mess. Markstrom leaves them a mess. The Wolf kid, they don't know if he's completely ready. It might be a rust job to think he is. The Val, whatever his name is, hold on. The Valdar guy can't stay healthy. Could Calgary be the worst team in this division? Yes. I don't see them moving up past where we have them right now. There's just not enough talent. There isn't. I love Huberdeau as a player, but you're in a toxic environment and a team with no expectation. It's all just a bad situation. I would be shocked if they were able to turn it around. I would have thought differently if Markstrom was still on this team, which he is not. That loss is huge. So yeah, I have them also third to last, and I could easily see either Anaheim or San Jose by blowing past them.
Yeah. Number 5, and I can see 4 and 5 flipping. I just think I've seen who I have at number 4 have a bit more of additions in the offseason where number 5 hasn't, and that is your Los Angeles Kings. I think that they do have a ton of talent in the pieces that they do have, but they're definitely a bit on the older side. And aside from Byfield, I mean, I could be completely wrong, and Chris, the old guy, could school me on this. There doesn't seem to be a ton of younger kids in their pipeline that are coming in the near future for Los Angeles. I think they definitely have pieces, but there's not like a, you know, it's a little murky right now, but showstopper in juniors is a year or two out. You know, for me, I see you've got the veterans from like the 2012 years, you know, Kopitar's still there, and you've got Byfield. And aside from that, I'm not 100% sure on this roster?
Yeah, I would assume we're going to be pretty well close. LA is that team that you don't know where they're at. You can't put them in the top 3, and you really can't put them in the bottom 4. So they're kind of off in their own little island.
They just seem like constantly on the edge of playoff contention. And I think what's the biggest question mark with them is, they definitely, push comes to shove, they definitely do have the ability to succeed. We've all seen them do it. This roster can do incredibly well. But when they struggle big time.
Yeah. They added Tanner Janot, who at some point in time somebody is hoping he plays like he did his first year in Nashville. They have young talent. Arthur Caleb is 23. Alex Turcotte, they're hoping, is a full-time NHLer now. He's 23. You have Alex Lafreniere, who is 22. Those 3 kids, they're expecting to step up.
Mm-hmm.
If they step up, you already have a top 6 that's pretty darn good.
Yeah.
You've got Fiala, you've got Kopitar, you've got Kemke, you've got Philip Deneau. You have a Trevor Moore who's a pretty decent player. Defensively, they're adequate. Just adequate though. They grabbed the Joel Edmonds, who's 31. Are you hoping he shores things up? You lost, I think, Murray, who probably was better. But they were trotting out Andreas Ingold as their third pair defenseman last year in the playoffs, and that doesn't get it done. Their other huge problem is, they got rid of their problem child that they signed, moved him to Washington, and got Darcy Kemper. Could Darcy Kemper all of a sudden play like the man who was in Colorado? We don't know. Probably not. So they're just not good enough to play with the big boys, but they're not a bottom feeder. So they'll be scratching for a playoff spot. Could they make some noise? Sure, they'll be a fine defensive team. And if Kempner gets his stuff together, they could maybe make some noise for a round or 2. That's it.
Yeah.
So, but they do have some young kids, all unproven. So we'll see.
Yeah. Number 4, and like I said, I could easily, if Los Angeles is able to make some noise, I can see them jumping up to number 4 and flipping with this team. Again, like I say, I go, the crusty old guy goes off of stats. I go off vibes half the time, which is why I have 4 and 5 listed as I do. And that is your Seattle Kraken. Partially because I want to see this team do better. Yes.
Hold on. I do have them flipped.
You have Seattle at 5, Los Angeles at 4?
Yes.
Okay.
So sorry about that, but yeah. But go on.
I think that they have some great additions for right now. I do think that the contracts that Seattle made during this offseason is going to bite them in the butt in 3-4 years. But I think right now it's fine. Right now it's what they need. Because they need to they can't afford to have another season like they did last year. They are not as fortunate to be an Original Six market or a Canadian market or just a market with a very big hockey presence. 1, they're new. 2, Seattle's on the smaller side in terms of other cities in the NHL. They cannot afford to do bad. They don't have to be Stanley Cup contenders, but they have to stay relevant within their division and within the NHL. So I think they're similar-ish to the Carolina Hurricanes, where they just need to consistently be in the playoffs, at least until they, have a more solid fan base and system out in Seattle. So I think the contracts that they signed are fine for right now. Also because you need more talented guys to play with Matty Beniers is your big thing. Seattle needs guys who can score. I think that they will, they could be 4, they could be 5. I think they're similar to Los Angeles where they have the ability with the roster to make noise. They're definitely not the top 3, but they're absolutely not a bottom feeder in the Pacific.
Yeah, I will agree with just about all of that stuff. They have solid veteran forwards who play the game the right way, will be solid defensively. Again, no legitimate superstar except for maybe Matty Beniers. Where they go will depend on if Shane Wright can finally put it together and have a good NHL season. He is the wild card. That was the guy who was supposed to go number 1 a couple of years ago, dropped to 4. If he can get it together this year, then look out. Now they've got 3 centermen down the line. Chandler Stevenson, you can then put in as your shutdown third line center, and you can start to make some noise. They have offense from the back end. You've got Vince Dunn, and you sign Monitor to another one of those contracts that, hey, might pay off now. It's going to look real bad in 3 years.
Yeah.
But they're worried about right now. So they can get a little bit of more offense just because of their ability from those 2 defensemen. Again, it's Grubauer and net. Does he get it done? Does Joey Daccord continue to play decently like he did last year? Again, another team with a huge question mark in net. And if your listeners have learned anything, question mark in net is a very bad thing. As we've told your listeners many times, you can mask a lot of deficiencies with a real good goaltender. So, I'm a Ron Francis fan, so I'm hoping it turns out well for him. But I've got them at 5. You've got them at 4. So we don't need to talk about my number 4. We basically talked about LA. I already did that. So we are on to 3.
And I think number 3 is where we're going to start to differ because there's 2 teams in the Pacific that I absolutely, out of spite, cannot put them at number 1 because it's my show and I can do what I want. Number 3, I have the Vegas Golden Knights. I do think that they are top 3. I do think that they have a crap ton of talent on their roster. But I simply just see Vancouver and Edmonton having a better season than they do.
Okay. I do not have them at number 3. I can tell you that.
We're at number 3.
At number 3, I have the Canucks.
Yep.
So, I do believe that the Canucks played over their skis last year. They got some good additions? They signed my guy, Dakota Joshua, who I think is a phenomenal hockey player. He will help their second power play unit. Connor Garland had a coming out in the playoffs. Forward wise, they're pretty talented. Defensively, not so much.
We're not Quinn Hughes.
Right, you have Quentin Hughes, who struggled in the playoffs, but he's an offensive player. And then you've got Hornick and Tyler Myers. That's about it. So your third defensive pairing is sketchy. Again, the Knuckleheads have Thatcher Demko, who is a difference maker, making goaltender. So, and the Knuckleheads did get Jake DeBrusk too, to help in a top 6 role also. So they will be a hard team to play against. They have good size. I just don't see them getting past the other two big boys in this division.
I have a question.
Yes,
'Cause
I have
I
nothing but
Vancouver
answers.
way higher up. You said that you think the Canucks played well beyond their skis this season.
Yes.
What makes you think that they can't run it again?
Just the law of averages. They came back a lot on teams, and I don't think that happens this year. I think Hornet takes a step back, and with that, Quentin Hughes will take a step back. And teams have figured out how to play him, and he is going to get hit constantly. They don't have enough defensive help, and they don't have enough speedy forwards to help him when that forecheck starts coming in nasty. JT Miller, I think, is one of the most underrated hockey players in the game, and he's got wheels. But the rest are mostly Connor Garland's got wheels, and after that, you've got your Brock Bessers, your players like that who are just solid physical players, but not a lot of speed. So I just don't. I think they got off to that good start, and things just kind of clicked for them. I don't think they'll click this year. Why exactly? I can't give you a complete reason. It's a solid team with the ability to. I mean, Demko, you think, is on the cusp of becoming a world-class goaltender, and the backup kid we've already talked about on this show.
We love.
So can they? Yeah, I like the coach. They seem to buy into the coach's message if that continues. But the other two big boys are big boys, man. So there you have it. Go on.
Number 2, I have the Edmonton Oilers. Like I said, mainly it's out of spite. But I just see them. I don't see them having the beginning of the season that they did this past year, but I don't see it clicking for them right away, and I don't see it clicking for a minute. Yes, they have talent. Yes, they are going to score a ton, but there's a lot of issues in Edmonton. And at the end of the day, I just don't think they get it completely done.
Yeah, I've got Edmonton at number 2 also. They are frigging loaded. As everybody likes to say, they have the best player on the planet. They will outscore just about everybody. And even if they lose Holloway, you picked up Victor Arvidsson, who, if he comes back from his injuries, is a solid mid-6 forward, let alone Jeff Skinner, who is a goal scorer. As much as crusty old guy will complain about the rest of his game, the guy's a goal scorer. They re-upped Henrique too. This team is loaded to learn how to play during the regular season and then go all the way.
Not all the way.
Yes,
all the way implies that you want it.
Yes, they have the ability to be able to do that this upcoming year. That is a power pack team. Skinner played a good amount of games. That has to help his confidence like crazy. Their biggest problem is probably Darnell Nurse and his contract, which you can't get rid of. And Darnell Nurse is not a top pairing defenseman anymore. So that'll kill them, but you still have Bouchard, who is. They'll have to work on their defensive pairing a little bit, but for the regular season, they're just going to outscore people. People are going to take reaching and every other kind of penalty because they can't keep up with the Edmonton Oilers, and then they're going to get destroyed on the power play. There's just way too much talent. They're just that good. It's disgusting. So, yeah, I would. The Oiler will make another run for the Cup. We'll see how the season goes to see if they can actually get there. Could Skinner take a step back? Oh, heck yes. If he does, things might be a little different. But you look at how terrible they started last year, and they still ended up, I think, in second or third. So there's just too much talent. There's nobody to defend against Connor McDavid, and then you can put whoever, all Jeff Skinner's got to do is stand there. He just has to stay in one spot and he'll get 20 goals. If he moves around a little bit, he'll get 30. So, again, if they stay healthy, there's no reason why they couldn't even be number one, but I didn't want to put him at number one.
Yeah, absolutely. We're not doing that. That's silly. Number one, I have the Vancouver Canucks because, as I've said, out of spite, I cannot put the Edmonton Oilers or the Vegas Golden Knights at number one in my predictions. Mainly because, and I'll disagree with Krusty on this, it clicked. I don't see why it can't click again for the Vancouver Canucks. I think they also have a bit of a chip on their shoulder, and they're a little aware that they are the underdog compared to Vegas and Edmonton, and I think that can certainly help them. They definitely have something to prove being in this division and being up against the big guys in this division. I do think they could possibly fall, but I'm not going to put that in my predictions, but it definitely could happen. But if Demko's firing on all cylinders, I don't think that they lost enough substance in the off season to really give them a cause for concern that they couldn't do it again.
Okay. Yeah, at number one, I have your Vegas Golden Knights. They are a plethora of talent.
I think the Vegas Golden Knights are your Ottawa Senators, actually.
No, they are not. They're a big problem. They're already 3.6 over the cap, so they need to do some things.
Somebody's going on injured reserve.
I would assume that'll be Mark Stone that'll take care of all of that. That's a league issue that they need to address the next collective bargaining agreement. But for right now, that's what they'll be able to do. They lost Chandler Stevenson, which will be a piece. He was playing like a second line center role for them. He's got good wheels, but they grabbed Thomas Hertl at the end of last year. That's a top line center when healthy. And then you have Jack Eichel, who's all world. They also got the Alexander Holtz kid from New Jersey, who I guarantee, I will state it right now, Holtz gets 30 goals.
All right.
I think he plays in
a soundbite.
Yep, I believe he plays in the top two, one of the top two lines, and he can light it up. So you pair him with Hertl, who's just going to stay in front of the net, and maybe Wild Bill, and that is one hell of a line. Then you go defensively. They ended up grabbing Noah Hanifin at the deadline, and they've re-signed him. That's a phenomenal. Defensively, they are solid as all get out. They're 6 deep. Then you have a question mark. Is Adin Hill really the guy? I don't know. I think it's a little bit of a tall axe, and then you have Samsonov. But it's just, they have so much talent. For that coach, they are going to play the right way all season. It's just, again, it's just too much talent. They have a mix of everything. And they have players on that team that understand their role. And they have players on that team that just make, especially Jack Eichel, that just makes everybody look so much better around him. I mean, Eichel's a superstar. Is he Connor McDavid? No. Connor McDavid has more flash, but they both produce the same way. Eichel can take over games. He's a force that has to be dealt with every shift. And you know when he's on the ice every shift. So I just think there's just too much talent and great coaching. So they'll find a way. I don't like it either. I don't like this game going on about the injured reserve, but hey, if you ain't cheating, you ain't trying. You use whatever you can to get through. You make the NHL correct their problems. You don't say, well, this isn't right, I shouldn't. No, you do everything you can, and that's, I mean, Vegas does everything they can. They definitely, you know, to use the pun, they push all their chips into the middle. Get it? Vegas.
Yeah, you're fun.
Okay. Yeah. I do believe the top three are head and shoulders better than everybody else. It'll be nice to watch them all battle. Your knucklehead prediction could be correct. If we're looking at those three teams, they definitely have the best goaltender.
Well, and I think, and this is just a personal opinion, I mean, regardless of the division, I just struggle to predict that a team that seems to just be entirely of all-stars, Edmonton, Vegas, they fall short at some point. Especially, sometimes it's the postseason, sometimes it's Game 7 of the Stanley Cup Finals. But at some point, it doesn't work.
Yeah, but I'll go down and say, you know, they've got enough talent. If they are not going to, it'll simply be because of the net. Because, as I said, that's what Vancouver has over those two other teams.
Yeah.
They have a proven world-class commodity goaltender. Neither other team does. Vegas has already proved they don't need one to win a cup.
Right.
And the Oil have just proven that, you know, their dysfunction just continues. But, you know, they're just so much more talented that they're always going to be in a good position. So as far as how many teams make it out of the Pacific, I'd figure right now I'll split, you know, 4 from each division.
That makes sense. I feel like it's been pretty split.
Yeah, it has been. The Central was supposed to be a little better, but, you know, those 4 teams in the Pacific are all good teams.
Right.
But again, 3 out of those 4, there's no completely proven goaltender. So that does make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. You got any last thoughts? Anything you want to say?
Anything I want to say?
Yeah, we got football next week.
Yeah, we'll talk a tiny bit of football. Somebody's going to explain to me why I need to get on the Bears bandwagon.
And somebody will explain just basic football to me because, guys, I know nothing. That'll be next week. As a reminder, we'll have a couple of guest episodes towards the end of the month. I will be out of the country and away from recording and social media and everything. We'll have some bonus guests once I get back into the country, going into training camp, going into preseason to get everyone back into the hockey mode. Should be some fun stuff.
Yeah, so basically what we're going to do is we're going to tease you with a little absence makes the heart grow fonder.
Exactly.
You're going to really want to all of a sudden see the two of us. And by the time you see after next week's show, the two of us, we're going to start. It's going to be close to hockey time.
Yeah. Thank goodness.
Yes. Yes. Oh, that was the other thing. I did want to find out from you being a Green Day fan. I would assume Green Day has a hockey song because they sing "Wake Me When September Ends." I would assume that means wake me up when the hockey season starts, right?
That makes sense. That makes perfect sense.
That's what I was thinking when I was at the show last night. With that, I'm out.
All right. So just as a reminder, make sure to hit that like and subscribe on either Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, however you watch or listen to us ramble on a weekly basis. Like we said, we'll be back next week with Brandon Combs from Windy City Sports Talk, talking a little football. And then we'll get into the Central before we're away for a bit. But that is all, and we will talk at you guys next week.